Bong, we're live. It's the Kent Beck Scrum, and we have Sam and Michael and Tim and Ben. And Michael, you were in first. Tell us how things are going with you, and if anything is daring to block you.
Yeah, it's still blocked on the test issues. I'm not sure what we need to do.
This is the AdWords API thing. So we've created the test manager account, the test client account, and we've got that token, but we're just not sure what the next step is.
Did you actually create like a test manager account, or?
I did. I went ahead of that. Those were the things that I linked to you in the new marketing analytics private channel, which is for all things marketing analytics that need to be privatized with keys and things that we don't want to share with everybody. You'll find all the details there.
Okay.
Anything else blocking you on your mind?
No, I guess that's it for right now.
All right. Let's go on to Ben. Hey, Ben. How are things with you?
Well, I think I posted this to the Paranauts Slack channel, and what's going on is I'm getting an intermittent behavior, which is the kind of thing that happens with when you're dealing with Phantom.js, I guess. And the intermittent behavior is that sometimes the tests pass and sometimes they don't. And I've sort of been trying to track it down using instrumentation and stuff, and understand it a little better than I did when it first started happening, but I don't know what I could do to make it not happen.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm encountering a similar problem with acceptance tests in a Node Electron project. It is, intermittent acceptance tests. Yes. So you kind of you're instrumenting it. You're making progress, but not.
Well, I don't know. I understand. I think I understand it about as well as one can, although I'm not sure. And the idea is that sometimes it's joining a channel, and sometimes it's not. So we have to have these two things that are joining a channel, and it's the JavaScript that's firing that off. So I think the idea is the JavaScript has to load and then run, and then it sends information to the Elixir backend stuff in order to join the channels, or it doesn't. And it's so far almost impossible for me to predict what determines whether that happens or not, given that I've run it with the exact same conditions a number of times, and it just decides the moment what it really wants to do.
Indeed so. Yes. Well, there's many more things I could say, but I will save them until the end of the Scrum. Anything else on your mind, or anything else blocking you?
Currently, I guess not. No, I mean, like I said, I've got the deep learning stuff up and running, so that's good.
Yeah, me too. Thanks to you. Yeah, excellent. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Ben. Tim's also here. Tim, you're of course welcome to just listen in, but yeah, if you want anything to report or anything blocking you, do let us know.
Yeah, I'm mostly just listening in. Thanks.
All right, great stuff. We also have a viewer as well. Greetings, viewer. For questions, we've got Slack for that as well. We're off the zero. We're off the very, very long tail of internet cat stuff and into the one viewer, sunny oasis or something.
I can't see that there's a viewer. Is that only available to the person?
I think that's the person who starts the Hangouts gets the ability to turn the broadcast on, and then I get a viewer count at the bottom. So it's usually like resoundingly on zero. We have had as high as 11 on very strange days when I guess the rest of the universe has been really bored. But anyway, yeah, that was one thing that potentially even going to Jitsi, we could actually like democratize that and everybody could see what's going on. But anyway, Google likes this top-down control thing, it seems. My updates, oh gosh. Yeah, I very much thanks to Ben, upgraded my Python. The deep learning stuff is now working. Yeah, I've managed to get the first affine thing working, so that's pleasing to get started on that. Yeah, there was the whole discussion about the confusion about timings and things. Yes, it would be lovely if the Slack reminders were perfectly coordinated with the Google Calendar and other things. There is an API. If we had engineering effort on that, potentially it could be solved. Maybe in the short term we can just turn off the Slack reminders. Go on, Michael.
I posted back to you. There isn't an API for setting it in a channel. It's to set it for a particular user.
Right. So you think it won't work for setting it on a channel?
I don't believe so, and I've Googled and people said it basically doesn't. And there was a response on Stack Overflow from an API, from a support person that was like, oh, that's an interesting thing we've heard and we're considering it, but you know,
right,
whatever.
yeah. So Slack may enable that at some point in the future, so it might be, best to turn those off. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Other things going on. What was happening immediately before?
So this is unrelated, I guess, to the Scrum, but just to be clear, what time has it been determined now?
Well, I tell you what, let's finish the Scrum and then we can come to that amongst other issues. Anything else in the Scrum? Yeah, I had a phone meeting with a potential paid project who said they're going to call back. We will see. I think that is actually it from me. That leaves us with, the deep learning mob time and talking about acceptance tests. The deep learning mob is set for that later time. So that is 3 p.m. UTC +1. That should be 10 a.m. EDT. So that's what we had agreed on Friday, and the immediate confusion was me just like not remembering that we'd agreed it and doing something stupid in Google Calendar. So as usual, as my wife has often determined, it is all my fault. Let's come then to acceptance tests. I also, following your help of upgrading the Phantom JS on Paranauts, Ben got rid of that ES6 system. I guess I mentioned, so Scrum over, we're in the after Scrum. So people don't need to stick around. This is Federico's always reminding me, if you keep talking, people will feel they have to stay, and they don't have to stay, but they can stay if they want. And it's all recorded anyway, so you can live it on loop. But yes, so I get intermittently failing tests there, and that's interesting to hear from you that it is, I don't know, the bane of my life the last 5 years. The promise of acceptance tests was that we would have, a way of automatically validating the high level behavior of the app. The reality seems to be, although that's impossible, it's possible in principle, the reality is that we end up spending, hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to get the tests stable. I'm doing exactly the same thing with these are Spectron tests in Node and Electron, and they fail intermittently. Different ones fail at different time. Apparently, they're all stable. So it seems like they're at some level the cause of these things is race conditions. I wonder if there's some like lower level of understanding we could get to where we would be able to resolve them. But what are your thoughts, Ben?
Race conditions in terms of, because I haven't determined definitively that this is what it is, but it seems like that Wallaby is starting up a Phantom JS, different Phantom JS processes, and those then have to be loaded into the fake browser, the headless browser thing that it's also starting, and that just doesn't always coordinate properly, which seems like, you'd be able to engineer that if you paid attention. But
yes, it seems to be, particularly these issues are very specifically encountered when JavaScript's involved. So like in local support website 1, the capybara tests that are using a headless browser, if JavaScript's not enabled, they seem to be pretty stable and predictable and all very good. If JavaScript is enabled, suddenly all bets are off. We get intermittent failures. My hypothesis is it comes down to JavaScript is like a non-blocking language, right? So basically, you can still have race conditions, from having multiple threads and so on, but in the JavaScript code that I'm working with recently, it's got huge nested loads of promises in order to manage blocking. So, like I say, it's engineered carefully, you can sort of handle all of these things, but again, that's the watchword, isn't it? Engineered carefully.
And every situation is different too, so it's kind of So unfortunately, I don't know what to. It seems like this is one of those problems where it's sort of like maybe these acceptance tests are not. I don't know. I guess I haven't exhausted every avenue, but I'm worried that it's not something that'll be a productive part of the workflow, unfortunately.
Acceptance tests for what app?
This is for the Paranauts app. And then the Elixir
Elixir
back
and using
and it's not a complicated JavaScript front end. It's as simple as right now. It's still almost like right out of Spike. So we're not using any kind of front end frameworks. still.
Yeah. I mean, there are clearly things to try, like such as switching to Hound just to see if that's any more stable. Obviously, we've upgraded the version of Phantom.js. It definitely. I mean, this was my reasoning like 2 or 3 weeks ago when I said, let's leave these aside because I think that they could be like just an indefinite time sink and make progress on delivering the MVP. I mean, I've got exactly the same thing with this Node Electron app, which is that I kind of stopped to back up and spend. I've now spent like 2, 3, 4 hours on it, but you've got to draw a line on it because otherwise you just end up. It's like a massive time sink. Maybe one day someone will come to us with a like insight into it, or that will get down that deeper level. I have, for example, got now in the I'm using VS Code with the for debugging this Electron app and so on, and with VS Code I've got really good editor integrated debugging working, and that has allowed me to catch race conditions within the what's it called, within the app itself, in a way that I wouldn't have been able to, and I've just got the tests running from them. So maybe we'll get to the point where there's like an ability to debug at a slightly lower level that will allow us to resolve these things. But in the meantime, we just got to be very careful about how we divide up our time.
Yeah. So I have there's one more issue that has come up in this thing that I thought maybe I'd get some insight on. And that is when I would say maybe 20% of the time the tests pass because both of the processes has succeeded in starting. But when that happens, that is when I get these here. Let me share my screen here.
Please do.
That is when I get my that is when I get these errors. Can you see here?
I'm just increasing.
Should I make it?
I can see the text output. It says 5 tests, 0 failures. They're in green.
Right. So, but you can't see anything above that?
I can see it. Well, I can see above that it says type error null is not an object evaluating window. So when you mean errors, there's some like other output that's coming from places that looks wrong, but the tests seem to have passed.
Well, no, this output is just output that I have instrumented in order to monitor what's going on more closely. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So these are like IO.puts. Like,
okay, yeah, right.
And then it joined this one, and this is like outputting the actual the presence object, right?
Indeed. I thought you were just saying that sometimes when it sort of all comes together and the things work as intended, you still get certain sorts of errors.
That's what I'm saying, and this is what I'm trying to demonstrate here.
Okay.
When it doesn't work, it just looks like this.
Right. Which is that's what I've
when
seen.
It does work, we get all these errors. Now,
okay, so
only time we get them is when it does work, and maybe that's obvious. Maybe that's obvious to you.
No. But that's certainly interesting. I mean, I guess when you say in the context of the testing thing, when you say we have errors, it sounds like the test should be failing. Whereas because it says 5 tests, 0 failures, so you've got some output that says there's a type error. Right. So I guess this would be like I would sort of translate these as being log warnings. But that's certainly very interesting that we only get those when it all works,
and it's referencing stuff that we're not using, like React, and you know what I mean. So it's looking for some stuff that it doesn't need to be looking for. I think that would be my hypothesis.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of I tried to chase that stuff down and say, well, what config file is making us do stuff that we don't want to do. And so that's a possible avenue of investigation, but I haven't really pursued it, and I wondered if anyone else would have any insight about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thing that it makes me immediately think of is that one of the issues that we have like a sort of doggy noise. Interesting. Because of the thing that we're doing with the Jitsi, and we're loading the Jitsi, and it's then loading an entire another kind of page from a different source into the. I assume it must be using an iframe at some point. So there's kind of like it could be that this is coming from the Jitsi environment, if you know what I mean.
So it may be, in fact, that Jitsi is the thing that's scuttling all of the, like if we could streamline that somehow.
Yeah, conceivably, or even like there's different. I mean, this is the other thing that comes back to the Jitsi thing is at the moment we are running these tests, and it's kind of the pages that are getting loaded are loading with Jitsi plugins, and those Jitsi plugins are reaching out to web.jit.c and then pulling stuff back. So we've got like a third-party network dependency in these tests. So depending upon the responsiveness of the remote web.jit.c, that conceivably could be affecting our test fails. I mean, the interesting thing to do would be like
just remove the Jitsi and see if we still.
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways, it's probably a big ask for the system to kind of like want it to, to load the whole of the Jitsi and the sort of teleconference streaming video whatever in the headless browser. Right. We could set. I mean, a way around it might be such that when we run the tests, we just, I mean, you can try taking it out, and that might have this pass. And actually, I think they always did pass. I mean, the time we started getting those strange ES6 errors, that was when we added the Jitsi back in.
True. Yep.
So what we could do is we could just instrument it so that basically on a test run that didn't load the Jitsi, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Maybe mocked it somehow if we were expecting something from it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. There's different levels at which it could be mocked. We could be mocking it such that we try to run the whole thing in a sandbox. From my experience with VCR and all the things, that's asking for pain.
Indeed.
I think what I would be tempted to do is just not load that JavaScript in, if you know what I mean. So, like, if you go to the
actually hack. Oh. Sorry, Michael.
Oh, I was going to say you could use Docker in development environment and. Once we get the Jitsi Dockerized,
that's another.
Load it separately.
Absolutely, it could be that we would have like a specific test server that we were controlling, and
or it could even be local to the computer that it's on.
That's true. It could
so that there's not like that big network question.
Latency delay. Yeah,
but that Jitsi Docker stuff is kind of another big blocker in this project in a way, right? So.
It is, and we'll I think. That's another exciting. We probably don't have time to go into it right now.
Right.
The simple solution that I was going to suggest, rather than mocking Jitsi per se, is if you go into, like, I can see you got the code behind these terminal windows. So if you just go there briefly, there's only one place. I think I forget where it is.
It's actually in, if I'm not mistaken, it's here. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, so we've got. There's that script source there, and then there's that ID, right? But I think it's actually so it's this thing here. Yeah. So we've got this
.js.
We're checking that Jitsi. We're checking already that basically, if we couldn't download the other things, that we wouldn't do these actions. We could add to this if statement here. We could be checking for the the mode that the system's running in.
Oh, and if it's in test mode,
if it's in test mode, we would basically not like it's this code. I can't see the numbers from lines 6 to 12 that actually up to somewhere there. That document parent node document query selector meet. That's the thing that actually then causes the remote stuff to be loaded from leak.jit.c. So if we just said in test runs, don't do that. That might be a good short-term fix, I think.
Yeah, although that's modifying the actual production code to do
the testing things. It is, and that's one of those things where it says like you shouldn't do that. Although, for example, we've got our entire Stripe framework that we have for handling the payments for Website One for Agile Ventures, on which like the all this kind of runs. And I spent got up to 100 hours as it got more complex, trying to keep it real, if you know what I mean,
pure.
With all of the pure, with the VCR, all of these things, got to the point where actually, I was basically, I could have spent, the next year, I mean, like unlimited amount of time continuing on that, or there was a, and this is like I got this from another working system from one of the Craft Academy students. There was a hook that basically says, okay, when you're going for your Stripe token, if you're in test mode, just grab this test token from here, right? It's enough
one line,
right? It's like one line does that. Suddenly, test stable, all working, and it's been fine. Do you know what I mean?
And it doesn't degrade the performance or anything, or compromise the security of the application.
No. I mean, what it means is that conceivably the tests will pass, but it might, every time you do that, you're introducing something that might fail in production that doesn't fail in the test.
Because you're not actually testing it. You're just
because you've excluded some part, and of course there's a danger that's where the things. What you've got to weigh up against is, okay, for that little bit, 0.1% of the app, where we won't actually be properly testing it, how many hours would it take, or is it even possible to actually test the entire thing end to end?
Right.
And at some point, if you want to kind of deliver an app to your customers and keep it on working, you just gotta, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely a trade-off.
Yeah. So it's a guideline. We definitely want to avoid it. I think particularly as one gets more and more exasperated with trying to create, completely realistic exception tests, you have to sort of draw lines somewhere.
Makes sense.
I might also add in something, just in the event that it's not a Jitsi problem, if you're able to sort of backtrack a little bit and let's say that you've got 10 tests total, but the first 2 tests are failing, then it could be earlier on in the process that it's actually failing. If there's a way with all those dependencies to in a linear way test each of those and then just sort of back up to square one and make sure that the first library that you're pulling in is pulling in correctly, and then the second, then the third, then the fourth, so that you can find out where the inconsistency is in the actual using those automated tests.
Right.
I don't know if that would help to isolate things. I realize that's what you guys are talking about with Jitsi, but in the case that it's not actually Jitsi, then you could isolate it potentially that way.
I think that's a great point, Tim. And even before we go into instrumenting, test on and off, Ben, you could sort of like comment out this code. And
that was definitely going to be my next step.
And then, as Tim suggested, there's a series of things of removing issues to try and get down to the core problem. So go on.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
All right. Good stuff. Good Scrum and good after Scrum. Great to see you all. I'm going to nip off and do some more coding. Good luck, Ben. And Ben and Michael, definitely see you at 10 a.m. EDT on Thursday. Yeah. If not before.
Okay.
So that's the normal time, right?
No, it isn't.
No.
All right.
What are we doing?
Okay. We'll
See ya.
More chat soon. Bye for now.